We are live, or as Britt Musburger used to say, who actually is a graduate of Northwestern University
Yes.
School of Broadcasting, I believe the Meadows School, or is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Middle school. Yep.
Uh, we are looking live from, in those days, he would say, sold out Cowboy Stadium in Irving, Texas.
Yep.
But really, he should have been said Texas Stadium in Irving, Texas, because it was never Cowboy Stadium until
Correct.
Jerry Jones had his palace built. But da 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 da. Dr. Bill Carroll,
Yeah.
NFL.
Fun fact. Future colleagues and not quite classmates. They were a couple years apart, but they overlapped. A couple years at Northwestern. Irv Cross was an all-conference corner at Northwestern. A couple of years behind, I think, Musburger, but they were at Northwestern. I think at least 2 years they overlapped. So they, you know, Musburger, of course, first knew Cross as an athlete, then later knew him as a colleague once they both worked for CBS.
And I was about to say, Zennie62Media NFL Draft Expert in Residence. That's the
Okay.
new title on top of the title.
I'll have to add that to things. It is an exciting time of year for people that study the NFL draft and who grade prospects. We have made it through what I like to call the regular season, right? The football season itself is sort of like you have the early season games or like the preseason, and then you make it through the playoffs and the bowl games. That's like the end of the regular season. But for us, the playoffs don't really start until the season has ended. For those that if the Super Bowl is the draft, then we are still in the playoffs. All the All-Star games, and then obviously the big deal, right? The sort of championship, the conference championship in essence is the combine. Mm-hmm. And we get to see the players that the NFL thinks will be drafted, right? The NFL's telling you, these are the players we think we're going to draft, and we've invited them. Sadly, only one HBCU prospect has been invited this year, Carson Benson. I got to speak to his father.
Whoa. On Black History Month, we have to talk about that.
We do have to talk about it, yes.
What's going on, Bill?
Well, what's going on is a lack of history, right? The sense of history that many scouts had really just one generation ago. You might remember this, Zenny. I think it was maybe the second year that the combine was televised. Mm-hmm. How Hampton University had more players represented than USC did.
I remember that, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was one of those things that's like we look back on that now. I think Hampton had 5 players that year, which is unthinkable, right? And there were at least, I think that same year, 3 other HBCUs had players there. Kevin Mathis was there, I believe, that same year.
Mm-hmm.
An offensive line. It'll come back to me. But I think a total of 8 HBCU players were there that year, which still is not a crazy high number to me, but we're down to 1, which is a shame. And I can, without thinking hard, I can think of 3 easily that I would have thought. Kendall Bowler from Florida A&M, I think, is worthy of being there. Isaiah Williams, right? I think is worthy of being there. From the Bison of not Howard. Yeah, Howard. Also, I was just talking about. So we get Kelby Gibbons from Southern. There's a really good group of pass rushers coming out of the HBCUs this year. At least 2 of whom I thought had a shot to be invited. Now, I don't want to take anything from Carson Benson. He richly deserves this. He was at the Senior Bowl, had a good week of practice, struggled a little bit in the game, but had a good week of practice. And once again, he has he looks the part, as they say, right? He has an NFL body. And while that certainly helps, like I said, there are other players who I think are, if not equally, then close to as deserving. It is silliness to me that there's not at least a couple more HBCU prospects there. And like I said, it's a lack of history. I think a lot of young scouts And of course, I don't know if you've noticed this, when you go to pro days, the average age has slid down considerably. So when I
Yeah.
first remember going to pro days, right now, probably close to 20 years ago, I remember being at Rutgers for Ray Rice's pro day. I remember being at, like literally less than 20 years ago, going to pro days, or right around 20 years ago, I guess. It's getting close to 20 that I realized. But yeah, a little less than 20 years ago, you would see a decent amount of gray hair, right? Some guys with a little bit of body fat on them. You'd see some younger guys too, but it was a sprinkling of young. But the average age was probably 42, right? Some 25, 26-year-old guys, some guys in their 30s, some guys in their 50s, and of course, a bunch of guys in their 40s. Now I see a sprinkling of guys in their 40s, a bunch of guys in their 30s, and probably almost half of them are somewhere between 28 and 24, right? A bunch of guys in their early, mid, and late 20s, decent number in the 30s, and then by the time you get to the 40s, it thins out. Well, it used to be that was the majority group when I go to a pro day, would be guys in their 40s. So I think that they are, man, I don't know if it's a cost thing. I don't know if it's guys moving out of the industry thing. I don't know. But I have noticed a general trend towards younger guys in terms of scouts. And I think that's part of it.
I have noticed that too. Go ahead.
I think that's part of it. They don't have a sense of, they've never gotten a guy from, Norfolk State or Howard or Hampton or, Bowie State or Savannah State or Clark Atlanta or, Bethune-Cookman. They don't know what it's like to see Jackson State, right? Jackson State, which I thought at least they'd throw a bone to Jackson State, have at least one player from Jackson State there. It is worrisome to me that despite all that's happened in terms of trying to shine a light back on the HBCUs, the HBCU combine, as they call it, though it's not quite a full combine, but it's attached to the HBCU Legacy Bowl, which I've had a chance to cover a few times in my career, is supposed to help, but that help has not really materialized to the extent that it should. There is still a lack of commitment to finding, to seeing, and to evaluating fairly and completely the talent that's available at HBCUs. And I'm hoping that the success that people like Eddie George are starting to have, and obviously Deion didn't stick and stay, but he brought at least a temporary uptick in attention to HBCUs. But I need these younger scouts to talk to guys that remember what it's like to go get Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, who went 7th overall, number 7 overall, right, from Tennessee State. Once again, it's unthinkable, right? Steve McNair was a first rounder. Doug Williams was a first rounder.
Yep.
Michael Strahan didn't miss the first by much. So there was a sense at one point, when he came out of Texas Southern, and Aeneas Williams coming out of Southern. There was a time when there was an acknowledgement that not just players, but stars were to be found at HBCUs. Now, I understand that with more opportunities and integration having taken hold of things like that, and guys transferring up from FCS and Division II to bigger schools, that trickle up has hurt to some extent, but not to this extent. There are still, without thinking hard, as I said, 2, 3, 4 players that are deserving to at least be admitted to a place where they can be more fully evaluated. The problem with a pro day is that not everybody's there. And increasingly, once again, HBCU's pro days are more sparsely attended than they used to be as well. And I remember, now this is a few years back, but one year at Jackson State, every single scout left after the 40. They didn't stick for anything else. The 40 was run. Nobody was under 4.6. Now, once again, there's offensive, defensive linemen, like it's everybody.
Say that one more time. No one was under 4.6.
Nobody was under 4.6 that year. I remember that.
No one.
Nobody ran under 4.6. There's people close,
including linemen.
Anybody, right? So nobody ran under 4.6.
That's amazing.
There was a couple people close. There was a defensive back. It was like 4.61, 4.62. One of the receivers ran also in the like mid 4.6s. He was a kind of a bigger possession receiver, but Nobody else. Nobody was nobody's under 4-6. They just packed up and left. Every single one just left. I understand there was a quote unquote scheduling conflict and all that kind of stuff, but it's like if you're invited to a party and you come to the party, you should at least stay to see, like at least till the drinks come out, right? Till the food is served. It was, and so that to me was a sea change, right? When I remember when that happened, that I remember thinking, okay, they don't look at HBCUs the way they used to. They don't look at HBCUs as legitimate sources of top tier talent anymore.
Wow.
And so that's what was obvious to me. It was obvious to me because why would you all leave? It wasn't like half of them left, 8 of them left. No, every single one of them, all the NFL scouts gone all at once. Exodus. So that sent a clear and present message to me. And while we have seen what people like Jacoby Durant is doing with the Rams, we've seen the career that some of the guys that have come out in the last couple of years. And how quickly some of them have made themselves important and impactful players. We saw what Marquise Bell did as an undrafted free agent, though he should have been drafted, for the Cowboys. We've seen that while the number is below what it should be, and once again, there's a whole other structural issue about that. There's this pervasive myth that, well, if you're good enough, they'll find you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pervasive myth that allows people to attack anything that says you're not doing this right, right?
Yeah.
Anything. So the pushback is, oh, if you were good enough, they'd find you, right? That's always what they say. Well, if you were just good enough, they'll find you. And you and I both know that lots of players who are good enough to play in the NFL don't get the opportunity. That's
right.
I mean, the math doesn't work out. There's too many good players. I mean, that's, I guess, a good problem to have. You're a talent evaluator, but exposure is everything. Exposure is everything. And once HBCUs got less exposure to the majority of NFL teams, there are still some teams that do a good job, that take seriously the opportunity to scout HBCUs and to get their hands on those players. And, I know that there's still a handful of teams that are in communication with coaches and administrators at HBCUs to sort of get a feel for who they have and things like that. But when I say a handful, I mean literally a handful, Zenny. I mean, I'm talking about 4, 5, 6. Where once it used to be pretty much the whole NFL at one point had a good sense. And, obviously this peaked at the between 1970 and 1980, right? Was sort of the peak because you had enough loosening of the racial restrictions so that people realized that they should go and see, people like Robert Brazil, and maybe you should check out Walter Payton, take a quick look at him, and hey, heard this kid at Mississippi Valley State who catches everything might be worth taking a look at. Jerry Lee Rice, Yep. Now, because of the time, Willie Totten didn't get a fair shake, and he ends up going to Canada. But at least people saw him. Like did he get kind of a screw job? Sure, but at least they saw it before they screwed him. There are guys who don't even get seen right now. I mean, I talk to NFL scouts, and I'll bring up certain players, and they'll say, "Oh, who's that?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, right? This guy's a 2-time All-Conference player, right?" If you're an area scout and an FCS, I'm not even talking about Division II, an FCS conference as a player who's twice been first-team All-Conference, and you don't know his name, and it's October of this player's senior year, that tells me that the connection has been broken between the NFL and HBCUs. And at least generally speaking, and like I said, there are exceptions. I want to make it clear that there are teams that do still do a fairly decent job of making themselves aware of who's playing at HBCUs. But it is not half the teams. It's probably slightly less than a quarter of the NFL teams really do a good job, really take seriously scouting talent at HBCUs. So,
and I have to say that Gil Brandt was the pioneer.
Gil Brandt was one. I mean, I don't know about the pioneer, but
for the NFL side,
right. Well, I would say a couple of people beat him to it, but he's at least in the first wave.
So the AFL side,
he's in the first wave.
The AFL side had a better track record than the NFL.
Yeah, he did well. Judge Wells, right? AC Wells with the Kansas City Chiefs really was sort of the first and he's one reason that the
But
Chiefs.
let's not forget AFL.
Right, I'm aware that they're in the NFL,
Yeah.
and on the NFL side, you have Bill Nunn, obviously, who had lunch famously with Art Rooney Sr. and took him to task. And Art Rooney said, I noticed you've been kind of dragging my name through the mud in the Courier. And he was like, well, no, I'm just saying that factually you don't do this. And he said, would you be willing to help me? And, Bill Nunn became a Hall of Fame level contributor to a Hall of Fame franchise, when they built that steel curtain, right? Two of the most important players in that front were from HBCUs. And then you had an undrafted free agent from South Carolina State in Mel Blount.
Yep.
So when you had, Hollywood Bags, right? Ernie Sims and L.C. Greenwood and that bunch at the front. And then you had, once again, the accidental Hall of Famer, right? I mean, I don't think even they knew at first they had a Mel Blount because he sat for almost 3 years behind Mike Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
Being on special teams, terrific on special teams, but not getting a chance to play on defense. But that tells you, how stacked they were at the time that Mel Blount couldn't play for a while. But the fact is that the much of the backbone of that team came out of the HBCUs. So, and like I said, we talked about Al Davis and his team did a good job of finding those guys as well. And while the level of talent has come down because of integration, it's not where it was in the 60s or 70s or even the 80s. It's still higher than people realize. There are more good players at HBCUs. I mean, look at what Javon Hargrave has done, right?
Yeah.
Javon Hargrave.
I was going to add it real quick, if I may.
Yeah, he's one of the better interior defensive. I mean, he's at a 7.5 sack season from the interior.
Yeah,
when an interior player is tied for a team's lead in sacks, that tells you what kind of player he is. So,
I just wanted to share this real quick because it's interesting. I found a list of the top 8 among the historic top HBCU players. Are 10 Steelers. Among them, in terms of ranking, are Mel Blount,
of course,
number 10, and then number 30th, Donnie Shell.
Yep.
And then 48th was L.C. Greenwood.
Yep.
And then we have, after Mr. Greenwood, 49, Greg Lloyd.
Yep.
And 51, John Stallworth.
Another sort of hidden treasure, Don Stallworth, right? A 4th rounder because
Alcorn State.
Yes. 4th rounder because he didn't Alabama State.
Alabama, thank you. Yeah.
It's okay. Because he on the day that he was, somebody just sort of worked him out, but it was a rainy day. He wasn't wearing the right shoes, ran a terrible time. And he was actually quite fast. It wasn't, and then somebody later timed him in a better situation, Bill Nunn, and it was like, oh. And he knew that, sort of knew what they had. And then there was a sort of gentleman's agreement about game film in those days. And of course, in those days, game film was film. It was a physical, roll of film. And after a certain number of days, you would sort of bring it back. Well, Bill Nunn accidentally forgot to bring back the John Stallworth tape. So anyone who got to see him on tape saw him before Bill Nunn visited because he forgot to return it. But the fact is, like I said, all the good teams of that era tapped into the HBCUs and did it quite heavily. And when I think about, while it took, teams like Washington a while to really tap in, partially because, of course, they were owned for a while by, George Preston Marshall, a very, 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 very much a, absolutely toxic individual and, a virulent racist. So, when they finally did start integrating the team, it was all guys from big schools, big Midwestern schools and things like that, like Bobby Mitchell from Ohio State. And it took them a long time to compared to some other teams, to really tap into the kind of talent that was available at HBCUs, and really didn't really do it for real until Gibbs gets there. But the NFL has, like I said, whether it be intentionally or unintentionally, that's, to me, neither here nor there. The fact is that the chain is broken, right? right?
Mm-hmm.
The connection is not there anymore for most teams. And so when a guy does get, seen nowadays, it's very often by accident. And when by accident, I mean they're watching Clemson or they're watching Maryland or whatever, and they just so happen to be playing against Howard or playing against South Carolina State.
Yeah, so it's like an ancillary sort of
right. Well, and somebody has a
or-
great game against this where they're playing up the level of competition. It's like, oh, who's this?
Mhm.
Right. They're not going to.
Well, actually, not ancillary, but ambient was the word I was looking for.
Right. It's just sort of happening.
Right.
It's it's not one of those things where they have a carefully planned design to get to 4 practices and 3 games and that kind of thing. I would say
this. Let's do this because out of respect for the people that are on their way, we're interested in their teams.
Let's get to the actual mock draft.
We're going to get started. Hey, folks, welcome. I just want, however, to open with one tribute, if I may, that I think Dr. Bill will appreciate, to one of the people who was historically, part of this deal, and unfortunately passed away. And so we've talked about Bill Chackus extensively. And so I thought it would be fun to, present a little taste of Bill Chackus talking about the NFL draft in the past on Zennie62 to get us started. Bill was, as I call him, the next Joe Bushbaum at one point. And here's Bill talking about the wide receivers in the NFL draft. I'm going to present it here as I present the screen, so you can meet our friend from Hicksville, New York, who's passed away. Dr. Bill Chackus talking about the wide receivers here on Zennie62. And let me go down here and dig that. And yeah, here we are. So there you go. That was Bill. Did that, I think, with no rehearsal. And Miss Bill, you got any thoughts to say about Bill as we get started?
Well, obviously, I think that was shot maybe 6 or 7 years after I met him. I think I met him in either 2002 or 2003. So, it is good to see him in better health, than what he would have been later in life. But yes, he was sort of in order. Steve Martin was the person who sort of invited me into the world of draft analysis. I'd been doing it alone in the dark, like many people's first sexual experience, alone in the dark. And I, as a kid, would take my notebooks, and then I would have that sort of free period, as I used to say, in junior high school, and later high school, and used that free period to volunteer in the office. And one of the little perks of that is you would get use of the mimeograph machine, and once again showing my age. But I used to publish, my little thing, and then in 82 and 83, and 82 through 84, I wrote a column for a newspaper, a man that my parents knew, published, called The Answer newspaper. And I first started my journalism career through The Answer newspaper. Mr. James, the late, again, speaking of people who have passed away, the late Mr. James Mims produced back in Norfolk, Virginia. And so, I'd been involved in looking at the draft since, the early 1980s, but there was no internet, right? And so except for things I would self-publish, I guess is the term we might use, using the mimeograph machine in the school office, or Mr. Mims through the Answer newspaper, there was no place to go with it. You just sort of, bother your friends and, show them your scouting reports. And then when I met Steve Martin and the advent of arguing on the internet, I remember, some of the early websites like Draft Countdown, The War Room, and Consensus Draft Services, which is where I got my internet start in terms of bothering people with my scouting work, and have progressed forward from there. But this is one of those years where I think this will be a difficult draft to predict. So in this first draft of my first mock draft, I am quite aware that at least 4 or 5 of those picks you see in front of you will not happen. But I am still in the process of gathering enough information, and of course the combine will help, to figure out which of those players will be seen as a top 5 prospect. Now, normally there'd be 2, 3, maybe even 4 quarterbacks in that first 4 to 8 picks. Mm-hmm. But this is not that year, my friends. And those quarterbacks probably shouldn't go as early as they're going, to be perfectly honest. In terms of my numerical grading, Cameron Ward grades out as a guy who's a mid-first rounder. Shedeur is a guy who's somewhere in that 20 to 24 range as a prospect. But they won't go where they're grading. They're going to go because of need higher than that. And it's the old saying about don't go shopping when you're hungry.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because
sure,
I can't see Shedeur Sanders getting past the Titans at all.
Well, I can see him getting past the Titans for 2 reasons.
I mean, obviously.
Now, one is that I think the Titans might trade down. Okay. So I'm still working on my trade down, trade up scenarios, but I think the Titans have decided internally to give Will Levis one more year for 2 reasons. One is that they're not fully sold on any of the quarterbacks. 2, if Will Levis is terrible, then they'll probably pick early again next year, and they feel better. Most teams are more bullish about next year's quarterback class. So I think that's all sort of part of a piece of why I think they're looking to trade that pick.
So what about I believe that something was going to take hold called I call the Jalen Hurts impact. And I believe that this is the first time in NFL history that a purely good running black quarterback, not, biracial, black quarterback. I'm just putting it out there, okay?
Okay. So even though Steve Young used to rock a little Mormon fro for a little bit. Remember he had like the curls? Remember that?
But that would mark him only as biracial. So
no, he's not biracial, but just
I know I'm joking.
He just used to rock a perm though.
I'm joking.
Or something, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
Right, but my point is that Jalen Hurts, I argue, has broken the dam by winning the Super Bowl, a dam that was already cracking because of the contributions of people like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, who doesn't shy away from being black. He's black. And we have to also think about people like, other black quarterbacks who play backup roles. We can talk about, even though he's more a passer than a runner, Jameis Winston, because he has a better record of deep passes on the run than any other quarterback in the NFL. We can talk about the other great black quarterbacks like the gentleman who's, I believe, played with something like 14 different John Johnson.
Oh, Josh
Johnson, thank you.
Who was Harbaugh's first quarterback when he took the job at USD at University of San Diego. Yeah.
Yeah, and not a bad runner. You need somebody who can get you yardage, but he's also an excellent manager of the game. But he's also a runner. My point is that the public has had a steady diet now of quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders, and the expectation will be, hey, he's a playmaker, he's a crowd drawer, and let's give him a chance. He has enough tape, if you will. I prefer to use the term video. He has enough video on him to justify his ability to pass well, his shortcomings being caused by, I argue, bad offensive coordinators, and I'll double down on that, as well as subpar talent, especially when you started out, to a point where someone would be willing to take a chance on him, almost like they would take with Mitch Trubisky coming out of North Carolina, which was an enormous chance because the Bears gave up their draft, as you remember, for this guy.
When they could have had Deshaun Watson and Mahomes without trading down. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Folks are talking about the 2017 NFL draft in Philadelphia, and Rick and I were looking at each other like, what the heck are the Bears doing? Rick is from All Access Football, Rick Saratella. We couldn't believe what was going on. But my point is that Shedeur Sanders gives one an argument to say, okay, he should be number one. Now, I believe that either he'll be taken number one by the Titans, okay, or Travis Hunter possibly is taken. In which case, yeah, maybe he drops and gets taken by the Browns. But I don't see that happening. I really see Shedeur Sanders being number one. And it's hard for me to say that. I understand what people are saying about Abdul Carter and everything. He's a tremendous player. But I don't see where he was able to win a national championship for Penn State. I can say that he was stopped from winning again by Notre Dame. I could say that they did a great job in their game plan or personnel stopping or slowing him down. They didn't stop him. Slowing him down, okay? But I'm not, but out of interest of time and moving along, there it is. Take us through your list, by the way.
Sure.
So,
well, and like I said, the combine will help with some of this. Shedeur is a certainly talented young man. He doesn't have the strongest of arms. He is strong enough, sort of in that sort of Teddy Bridgewater, Case Keenum, like enough. It's enough of an arm. People want to probably see him put on another probably 8 to 12 pounds of good weight. He's kind of slender. My main concern is that he passes up open receivers trying to make something bigger happen downfield. But that's something that's common to a lot of young quarterbacks especially ones who think of themselves as playmakers as opposed to just trying to pick up first downs.
Yeah. But Bill, don't you think, as a question, I can fix that by scheme. In other words, I can call plays where there isn't that opportunity to do that. You have to throw short. So I'm not worried about that. I can engineer that out of them. I don't, that's like, okay, that's an engineering issue for me.
Well, I mean, decision-making, and you're right, you can take decision-making away from the quarterback. I guess that's one way of fixing someone whose decision-making isn't always the most solid.
Yeah. Generally speaking, but Bill, I want to say, that's why I put out a press release saying, and went some distance, fire Ken Dorsey. And when you type Ken Dorsey and Browns, it was number one because he was badly coaching the Browns, in particular, Jameis Winston, and putting him in plays that anyone who knows how to design a pass play is aware, hey, this is going to get you intercepted. You're basically knowing you're going to draw man for man. You're causing the defender to run into a place where he's going to pick off the pass. You're asking Winston to wait, and everything's off timed. It's consistently off time. He did this, he being Ken Dorsey, in an agonizing state. And Bill, what I'm tired of is people, not you at all. I'm just saying, because we talk a lot about this, but I'm talking about broadcasters and people like Tony Grossi in.
Oh, well.
Thank you. And thank you. Okay. Who give this pass to anybody white, and it's this dog whistle racism that makes me want to throw up.
Sure.
You know, and I'm tired of it. And they give offensive coordinators a pass, and they'll just, especially if the quarterback is black, they'll just blame the quarterback. And that pattern is in. And I said, you know what? I am going to change the weather on this. I'm going to get this guy fired. And so I'm the first person to actually put it out there, where you type Ken Dorsey Browns, you found in Google News, fire Ken Dorsey. All right. And they did it. So, because I'm tired of this stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, Tony Grossi is certainly an example of a type of thinking that hopefully we're going to move past soon. But that having been said, there are some things, as you said, you can do schematically. There's things you can do in terms of what you do as a coach, but there are also things you'd like to see the player figure out, especially when they've played a certain amount of football. You'd like to see them grow to some extent in seeing, I don't have to try to win the game, right? I just have to,
right.
I just have to get first downs. Like Josh Allen, speaking of players who sometimes get a pass, but Josh Allen twice led the entire NFL in turnovers between interceptions and fumbles. Now, to his credit, he worked hard and fixed some of those things. Also, he's had some really good coaching. Not only his, actual coaching from the team, but he also has private coaching with Jordan Palmer and that bunch. So he's worked on some of his weaknesses and some of the things that got him into trouble. He hasn't completely purged himself. Right, the first play of the game in the in the conference championship game, he tries to throw an interception.
Yeah.
They wouldn't take it, but he tried.
Yep.
So he still will give you opportunities to pick him off, but it's not like it was like in the old days. He wouldn't have allowed himself to not throw an interception. Oh, you don't want that one? Well, how about this, right? He now has gotten to the point where after those one or two interceptable balls, he usually calms down. But back to what we're talking about. I think that the Titans are a team that needs everything. They're a bad team, which is why they're picking where they're picking. And I think they may decide to keep their powder dry in this draft for two reasons. One, like I said, I think they may not be completely sold on any of the quarterbacks. Two, if somebody's willing to offer them a king's ransom for this spot and they can still come away with either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, it actually is a pretty smart move, because those are players of need in positions that are high-value positions, and where the quarterback class next year looks like it's going to be deeper and thicker in terms of the band of talent towards the top. These two positions, corner and defensive end, or pass rusher, whatever you call it, actually, at least, once again, it's too early to call, but look like they are less talent-rich than this year's class.
Here's another something to think about, though. You've got the Titans on their way. Have you seen the new stadium trying to build? Or they're not trying to building?
I've seen the, what do you call it, mock-ups.
Mock-ups? Whoa, they're way past that, bro. Way past that. Oh, my Lord. Let me clue you in. Titans and everybody else watching. Titans new
renderings, or whatever term you want to use.
Yeah, way past that, man. I mean, way past that. All right. Because they started construction on it not too long ago, and let me see here. Tennessee Titans new stadium construction update. Yeah, here we go. All right, because a lot of people haven't seen this. What I'm about to share with you, I'll just share with you the basic findings from the search in the out of interest of time and flow. But everyone should be aware of where the Titans are. Here is the Titans' new stadium. It's going to be finished in 2027. Okay. And my argument is that the Titans, first of all, you're not going to expect to be in the same position in the 2026 NFL draft that you are in the 2025 NFL draft, right? So it stands to reason. Here's the live construction cam. It stands to reason that you'd want to get a new quarterback to, essentially start the get the ball rolling and give a reason for everybody to come to the facility. You got Shedeur Sanders basically, christening the stadium. Now, for those of you who think this is just in the rendering stage or something, let me blow your mind. All right, let me effectively blow your mind right here with this. Nice little photograph. Well, not so little, really, but have a look, Bill. Now that's progress, don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I was aware that they had started, and you can see that they started on some of the superstructure.
That's significant. They are about right now. They are 74% done with the core, and of course they've got until 2027 to finish the rest, including the grounds and the roads around it. But this is a remarkable project paid for. It's very unusual funding. Unusual because it's basically paid for by the state of Tennessee. And the city of Nashville has a blank check agreement to pay for overruns. The Titans throw in $200 million, all right? But the majority of this $2.4 billion beauty is covered by the public sector. How many times have you heard that?
Well, more often than I'd like.
Well, you want zero. Me, I think it's a great thing, primarily because of the benefits that the public gets from this that are being carved out in this way. In the case of the Titans Stadium, those benefits are enormous for the community. If one happens to read their community benefits agreement, I highly suggest you do so. They want to open a new stadium. They're going to want to open, I argue, with a quarterback, and I think Bill is meditating, but they're going to want to open with a quarterback, and so
I mean, the problem is, once again, shopping when you're hungry. When you just start grabbing a quarterback because, we're picking early, we're picking one overall, there's a quarterback there, is how you end up eventually driving down the total talent level of your team. When there's a player who might have been a better player available, and you might have gotten a nice package of picks to trade down. Now, we'll see what happens.
Bill, how many times have we seen teams do that?
Well, I mean, we've seen it a few times. Right? But we've also seen sometimes when that team still ends up getting like the better player, even though they trade down, right? Think of how many times the player that goes after the player is who's the more celebrated player ends up being the better player.
Yeah, sure.
But to get back to what we were saying, I don't think Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback in this class anyway. Mm-hmm. I think Cameron Ward's better than him in almost every measurable way. Mm-hmm. So while you can just take Shedeur Sanders just because you're taking Shedeur Sanders, if you just want to, mm-hmm. I've seen more from Cameron Ward that tells me he has a better chance to be good, especially good early. Right?
Why?
Well, several things. He has better judgment. He's more accurate. He has a stronger arm. He's a better athlete. He's more mature. Let's see what else. He's played in more different kinds of offensive systems. Let's see. Tougher, both physically and mentally.
And yet, he wasn't up for the Heisman.
That means nothing. Would you like to hear some of the people who won the Heisman? Jason White won the Heisman. I mean, that doesn't move me at all. Gino Toretta won the Heisman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Especially at quarterback, the Heisman has not been a good luck charm, actually.
No, but I would argue though that the
Heisman
Heisman
winning
has
quarterbacks have actually turned out to be Hall of Fame.
I would counter that. Let's see. Cam Newton, Heisman Trophy winner in the Super Bowl.
Okay, solid, right? Marcus Mariota had a couple of decent years.
Jameis Winston, even better. One of the best passes. One of the James, no, tell that right, because Jameis Winston had one very good coach his entire career, and that was Sean Payton. 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and then they took a bounty out on the kid, and then they made up this whole stuff off the field. Why do I say that? Because if you go to ZennyReport.com, folks, you will discover that Jameis Winston was pointed to as being violated by none other than the now husband, then boyfriend of Erica Kinsman. And he told me that by text. Okay? And I'm saying that, emphasizing that, because mainstream media should be picking this up. I'm driving it again and again and again. And everybody that has seen what I've written and put on text agrees. All right? And the charade has got to stop against Jameis. It just has to stop. I say this on Black History Month. It's got to stop.
Right. Well, I'm just talking about his actual play on the field. I'm not talking.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the fact that he's had lousy coaches. Okay.
Sure.
This guy had no.
I'm not disputing that, but
yeah.
But there are some players.
Wait. Are you saying, my friend, that he is supposed to basically make his bad coaches look good?
I've seen guys do it, but once again, that's a whole other discussion.
No. I'm not saying I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying if you say yeah, I say okay, I get it. But you didn't say yeah.
I mean, the goalposts are being moved. We were just saying, I was simply saying that the Heisman Trophy has not been a precursor of success for most quarterbacks. And that's been factually proven. Like they have, both of them have not been great.
But what do you define as great?
Great, as in great, like Hall of Fame level, or at least close to Hall of. When you're talking about the Heisman, that's the best player in college football, correct?
So they say.
So they say, right? So if you want to say you are continuing that arc of greatness, you should then be at least close to that same level of greatness at the next level. Cameron Terrell Newton, MVP winner. I would say that's analogous. That's pretty close, right? Roger Staubach, right? But now the list gets
Baker Mayfield.
Baker's done fairly well, right?
Yeah.
Right. Not quite MVP level, but he's been very, very good.
He's also been the victim of bad coaches like Kevin.
Right, I'm agreeing with you. I'm definitely agreeing with you, but I'm still saying I'm not trying to then create additional context. I just want to say, which is, I get you're doing that, but the point I'm making still stands, that the Heisman Trophy has not turned out to be a precursor for success for most quarterbacks. Most of the quarterbacks who won the Heisman have either had almost no NFL career or not super successful ones.
Most.
Yes, over half. Most is over half.
We got to do a show on that one because I disagree.
We could do seveal shows, but the math won't change. Most is over half where I come from, Xenophone. So.
But wait. Where you come from was where I come from, Chicago. What are you talking about?
That's all I'm saying.
Where I come from.
Where I come from, if there's 7 of something and 4 of them are bad, that's most.
But where I come from, in Chicago,
yes,
if you have more of something, that's most. And I'm arguing that.
So okay. 4, if 7 is the number and 4 are bad, that's most. If 3 are decent, right, and 1 is great, or 2 are decent, or 3 are decent, and 1 is great, but 4 are bad, that still means that more than the ones that are good or even decent are bad, right? That's most where I come from.
So you're telling me that basically, of all the Heisman Trophy winners, the ones that
quarterbacks, yes, that most of them have been below average NFL quarterbacks. That's exactly what I'm saying.
That's what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. You have one truly great one, right? Staubach's a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
You have a guy who certainly had a very strong beginning of his career in Cameron Terrell Newton, right? Guy who won an MVP. Never going to see the Hall of Fame, obviously, unless he pays to visit. But he got off to a really strong start to his career. Baker Reagan Mayfield is one of those great reclamation projects. Hall of Famer? Probably not, but Hall of Very Good, perhaps. And then from there, the fall off is, okay, maybe Jameis gets a chance to be a long-term starter somewhere. I root for that, but it hasn't happened yet. And
Yeah,
then the rest.
what do you mean? He was long-term starter with the Bucks. Come on.
Okay, maybe we define long-term slightly differently.
Yeah, I'm saying 4 years or more. That's long-term. He was that with the Bucks.
I don't think he started all 4 years.
Yes, he did.
Hold on, let me see.
I don't know what's going on with you, man.
Okay, so he gets his first start week 7 of his rookie year, right? Is that right?
I mean, he gets his first start. He started that year right off the bat. They threw him in there.
Did he start week 1?
That was Lovie Smith. And
I don't think he started week 1.
That he did. That was with Lovie Smith and Dirk Carter was the offensive coordinator.
I remember Lovie and Dirk, and yes, I remember that.
And they started. And I remember the first game. Preseason that Jameis started in, and it was evident to me that Jameis is going to have a problem because of the way he was being coached through interception.
Sure.
Because of the way he designed this ace formation, tight end pass down the middle,
right?
Without the tight end just running. There's no break in the pattern. He's just running, and Jameis throws it to him because Jameis' mentality. And I know him now. That
Jameis trusts his receivers implicitly? Yes.
Well, no, it's more than that. Jameis trusts his coach because people forget what it means to be a black quarterback.
Both things are true. Yes.
It means that how many times have you seen a black quarterback argue with his coach on the sidelines?
Well, I mean, I have seen it. Obviously.
Yeah, but how many though?
I mean, it's a small number because I've seen Lamar do it.
Now their white counterparts argue. I can name you the people that argue with their coach.
Oh yeah, I mean
Ken Stabler, John Elway, Rich Gannon,
Bo
Nix. Okay,
I mean, I remember watching Gruden and Gannon damn near get into a fist fight on the sidelines. So, yes, I'm very aware. Yes,
right. Bo Nix. Okay, Bo Nix. And so my point.
Yes. Okay? So my point is over half is most.
White guys get a pass for being that way. But Jameis and everybody else knows that if you did as a black quarterback, you're sitting on the bench. Okay, so you got to do what they ask you to do, and they're in lay the trap. You can have this stupid butt coach who says, "Hey, look, I want you to run this play, which you know is going to get intercepted. You know you have a hard time executing, but he wants you to run it, or he's going to put your white counterpart out there ahead of you." All right, and that happens a ton. Okay, and people don't talk about this stuff.
I mean, you and I both know that while things are better, it's not an even playing field. No one's disputing that. I've never disputed that. What I have said, once again, like I just said with the whole thing with the Heisman, is that
Anton, we're getting there.
Is that if there? Yes, are we going to draft soon? Good question, Anton. I thought the answer was going to be yes. I didn't particularly care either. It wasn't an argument.
I cared. He cared. I cared. It's my battle to fight. And Anton, before I close and shut up, as you would ask me to do, Anton, this is what I'm going to show you all, just to show. All right. No, I just got to show this. All right. I just want you all to see this because I don't want you all to forget what I'm about to show you. Here are the NFL quarterbacks who have won the Heisman Bill, okay, who are in the NFL playoffs. All right, right here.
No, let's name them.
Let's name them. We have Cam Newton, Robert Griffin, Andrew Luck.
Carson Palmer's above average.
But they all won the Heisman. Okay.
Yeah, I said he's above average.
But they all won the Heisman.
Eli never won the Heisman.
Okay.
So I don't know why he's up
Roger
there. Eli did not win the Heisman. What's he doing up there?
It says Heisman Trophy.
Also, Peyton almost won the Heisman. He finished second. So something's wrong with your list, my friend.
It's not my list. This is the NFL list.
Well, right, but Peyton Williams Manning finished second in the Heisman voting to Charles Woodson. Well, Eli didn't even finish that high.
NFL.com. They've got Cam up here. They have 18. The NFL has 18 players that they mark here. Cam Newton. Matt
Leinart won the Heisman, and womp womp regarding his career.
Yeah, but the whole point is they did go to the playoffs.
Chris Winkie, that doesn't make you good.
But they went to the playoffs.
Again, you're trying to move the goalpost up.
No, I'm not.
These are still below average quarterbacks. Chris Winkie definitely qualifies as below average.
I agree with you there. Okay. Charles Woodson is not a quarterback.
No, but he did win the Heisman.
Neither is Tim Brown. He's a wide receiver.
Right.
All right. And then of course we have
Yeah.
the great Rondane,
Hey,
remember,
Rondé, yes.
right? Then we got
Eddie
of course
George.
Eddie, the coach.
Yep.
We got the coach. Once
And
an
that's
actor
Desmond
too.
Howard.
Desmond. Most of these guys aren't quarterbacks.
And
So remember
MVP.
that.
Yes, because not many
Rich
quarterbacks
Rogers.
have done well who won the Heisman,
Right.
which is my
Marcus
point
Allen.
earlier.
Archie
Point I was
Griffin.
making earlier is that they don't tend to do well.
Jim Plunkett.
Jim Plunkett.
Super Bowl. All right.
Yeah, but still, not a great quarterback.
You know I'm right. Tony Dorsett.
He wasn't a great quarterback. Like,
Staubach.
that's a team achievement. He's not a great quarterback.
Oh, you're equivocating. John Horton.
Yikes.
Yes.
I'm feeling better about my argument.
Mike Garrett.
Athletic director. USC, later an AD at USC.
Yes, sir. Paul Horning, who I met
the Golden Boy.
In
fact, still to this day, and this will always be the worst team, right, of any Heisman Trophy winner, 2-8.
We will call it. I'll tell you what.
We'll never see that again
until we get back to this subject. Out of respect for Anton, we'll call it a draw.
Out of respect for Anton.
We'll call it a draw.
Anton, well, then he likes to do that because then he doesn't like to lose. But
no, I don't like to. You're right
as
about
I said
that.
before, over half of the quarterbacks who won Heisman's were below average. And I
disagree with
that because it's factually correct. If you look at the average of what a quarterback does in his career in the NFL, a starting quarterback, those guys didn't hit the number. Some of them never even started a game. They didn't even show guys like Jason White, who never played a darn game.
We need a black-robed, impartial judge, somebody who can come in.
Or we could just do math, like I did, and counted up all the quarterbacks that actually won the Heisman.
No, you're math. That's not math. That's just fixing numbers, man.
No, I said how many quarterbacks won the Heisman? How many of them were like Newton above average, Palmer above average, right? That's easy, right?
But you didn't define what above average is.
And Staubach, great, right?
No,
so
above average is going to the playoffs.
But here's what
that's the way I look at it.
You're trying to tell me that Tim Tebow is above average as a quarterback? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I am. You want to know why?
You and I have extremely different definitions.
I'll tell you why. Hold on a second. I'll tell you why Tim Tebow is above average. You want to know why? Because Tim Tebow proved something that I was arguing with Pat Kerwin about way back in 2006 when I predicted the rise of the read option. I said if Vince Young were in that kind of offense in the NFL, he would go to the playoffs in the Super Bowl because you could design passes off of it. Okay, in those days that was unheard of. What I'm trying to explain to you, Bill, is there's a lot of what I call it physical education thinking as opposed to scientific thinking.
Sure.
There are a lot of people who, to this day, they say, "Oh yeah, I've heard of the big data ball," but they don't at all follow the algorithms that are coming out of it. I do. Okay.
Sure.
Or they don't design plays about it. Okay. You have some people who are so stupid, they think that you can't have 5 wide receivers. You have to have somebody back in the block, forgetting for the moment that you can actually throw a short pass such that it negates the need for an additional blocker. All right. There are people who don't even get that to this day. I'm thinking, you have like 3 heads or something? It's not making me smarter to have the extra head. There's a lot of stupid thinking out there, Bill, and it hasn't been exposed, and I'm tired of it.
Sure. Well, those are 2 different things. But once again, numerically, if you just count the number of quarterbacks that won the Heisman and how many of them had at least an average NFL career, fewer than half, which means most did not. Now we can move on to the draft.
Ta-da!
So, I said,
this is his list, by the way.
There'll be some trades. I haven't worked out all the trade scenarios, so the next version of this will look different. But I think the Titans are looking to trade down. I think that somebody will trade up into the first spot. I haven't figured out who yet, but somebody will. And so I still think that they'll probably end up drafting either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carr, depending on who's available, where they pick. I think that Cameron Ward's the first quarterback off the board. And while Shedeur is a exciting prospect, I just feel like if your job is on the line, you're probably going to take Cameron Ward.
But how do you explain Shedeur to the Giants then?
Because 2 things. One, I think that Shedeur is a better fit for what they like to do. I think that's part of it. Also, frankly, personality-wise, I think he's a better fit for what that franchise likes too, right?
Explain.
I think that franchise is more likely to embrace that kind of personality, partially because of the New York, though they're not in New York, they're New Jersey, but whatever. They're in the New York market. I think that is a fit for Shedeur's branding opportunities and things like that. I think Cam Ward's just a football player. Not to say that he's not an interesting person, but he's not a personality the same way. People haven't seen him in Taco Bell commercials the way they've seen Shedeur Sanders. They haven't seen him walk the runway. Speaking of New York, right? Fashion Week. Shedeur Sanders has walked the runway, right? He's modeled. Cameron Ward's a football player. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean that Cam Ward's going to automatically be better, but I think that he's a prospect just looking at as an NFL prospect. While Shedeur Sanders is a celebrity in essence. And I think New York and its New Yorkness fits what the Sanderses are looking for, quite frankly, for Shedeur as well. Also, like I said, I think Cameron Ward is a better fit for the kind of offense. Well, we'll see. They may change, right? As you said, a lot of teams may change their offenses. We'll see. Travis Hunter, I don't think, if he's still available, doesn't get past the Patriots. The Patriots have their quarterback, obviously. Drake Lee May, as I told you, is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL very soon. And you and I went round and round about that too, right? Remember that all the debates we had about Drake May?
Yeah, I still think he's not quite there. I mean, I think he's given a lot of chances to be.
None of them are there.
But I think the guy behind him is even better. And I'm talking about Joe Milton.
Joe Milton?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
See, this is where seeing someone up close makes a difference. Joe Milton is so erratic, and his mechanics are such a hot mess. But hey,
yeah, because they don't. You know why? Because they don't work on him. That's why. That's bad coaching. I'm not going to. I'm old school. I'm going to do. In fact, you say that his mechanics are off. You know who also had bad mechanics coming in, but whose coach worked on him? Do you know?
I mean, Josh Allen is one of that. Brett Favre. I mean, there's guys.
Will Levis was worked on by Mike Vrabel for 7 months. And then he stuck him back in because his mechanics were terrible. His footwork was awful with respect to what they were doing in terms of the playbook. He wasn't learning it. And there are a lot of plays. You can tell that just watching the videos, like for the Cleveland Browns, they were stupid enough to try out their videos from practice. Oh, my goodness. It didn't matter whether it was Jameis or Dorian Thompson.
Robinson.
Thank you. Who were at under center or under, air center, if you will. The footwork was inconsistent. The throws were inconsistent. Yep. And the coaches were sitting there just watching them. And I'm staring at the screen yelling. Okay. Sure. It was agonizing.
I'm agreeing with you there.
There's too much bad coaching that's being allowed.
We're not, once again, we're not even disagreeing. Moving on. Will Campbell is one of the cleanest prospects in this entire draft class. I assume if he tests like I think he's going to test at the combine, he won't get much past this. One of these teams you see here, either 5, 6, or 7, will draft Will Campbell if he makes it to that. It's not out of the realm possible that he could be snapped up by a team picking where the Patriots are picking. Once again, the Patriots may not be picking at 4th when this is all said and done. There's going to be a fair amount of movement, as I said, but I just haven't figured out who or where yet. But Will Campbell is one of those people that you can find things to pick at, but not much. He has good bend. He's got heavy hands. He moves well. He's terrific in the run game as a blocker, and he's above average in the pass game as a protector. Not fully where you'd like him to be there. He oversets sometimes. He can reach for the parry, as we used to say in fencing, where he's a little too aggressive at trying to meet the defender and gets out over his skis a little bit. But he's a pretty darn clean. He's a guy who's like a 92 out of 100 kind of grade player. And that's where you want to pick players like that. Will Johnson, he's not my favorite corner, but he's the NFL's favorite corner. There are corners I prefer to him, but the NFL, I've talked to enough NFL people to get a good sense that the NFL likes Will Johnson. He's a guy with a terrific character, high IQ, looks the part physically, and once again, I think he'll test well. So unless something untoward, something unforeseen happens, either like an injury or something comes out at the combine or something medical, he's going to go, once again, somewhere in that 5, 6, 7 range. And then Mason Graham. So Grant and Graham are the two powerhouse interior players at Michigan. And I could see Grant going, maybe not quite this early, but going really early as well. And Graham is a rare prospect. Now, not every team wants someone that size. He's so darn big. But teams that do want players that size, and not everybody does. Some teams are going with that lighter front, right, where Even the guy who's your quote unquote nose is 308 or 312 pounds. But he's your old school. He's 330 something pounds. Now he'll probably slim down a little bit for the combine. He'll probably be 327 or something to run. But he commonly plays between 341 and 336 pounds. So he's an old school, big Wilfork style nose tackle. And if you'll scroll down, we'll get to 8 through about 14, I think is what we should be seeing next. Here we go. So Tisharoy McMillan is a guy who might end up being surpassed. Once again, the combine is going to make a big difference to the wide receiver rankings by one of the other wide receivers, because his tape is fantastic, right? But he's one of those people sort of like Alshon Jeffrey, or he's a bigger bodied receiver with decent body control. Let me not do that. For his size, really good body control. He can run good routes. He has terrific hands. He doesn't mind getting hit in the ribs. He'll still catch the ball. I have a feeling he's not going to test super well. Now, if I'm wrong, then he solidifies his spot as a top wide receiver. But he could get passed up. But if he ends up having a good week at the combine, I think he sticks somewhere around here. Michael Williams is one of those what I call mystery box prospects. Does he have some good tape? Yes. Does his tape quite justify 8th overall? Not in my opinion. Yeah, I'm agreeing, Anton. I think Tennessee does move down. As I said before, I'm still working on the trade scenarios. So I promise in the future. Now, he might not get past Jacksonville. I'm not disagreeing with you there, but Jacksonville has so many needs, and they want to give their quarterback a chance to go back to looking like a top 10 quarterback, not like a bottom 8 quarterback, which is what he was last year. But getting back to Ted, I think that he goes somewhere, once again, unless he has a really bad combine, somewhere in that top 10. Michael Williams is like I said, sort of a mystery box. Not that he doesn't have some good tape, but once again, you're sort of betting on the future with a guy like him. He has not shown me enough to take him that early, but NFL scouts love his potential. I like to see production married to potential when I pick in the top 10, but some people don't care about that so much, right? We've seen guys get taken who haven't done that much in terms of actual production, and sometimes it works out, right? Travon Walker was a great example of that. He went first overall. Kelvin Banks. Now, is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Depends. I think he's going to measure in at somewhere between about 6'4.5" and 6'3" and 7/8. For some teams, that's automatically kick inside the guard. And arm length will also be
Bill, quick.
Yep.
For the Saints, there are a number of people believe that the Saints need a lineman like the guy out of Oregon. Thinking
Connolly?
of actually Josh Connolly Jr.
Connolly? Yeah, I mean, they it's a little early for Connolly. If they want Connolly, they should probably try to trade down. Because he's not going to go quite this early. He's going to go probably somewhere in the early to mid-teens. So possibly even a little later. So if they really like Connolly, and I saw Connolly have an up and down week at the Senior Bowl, which once again, to be fair, it's not football, right? I mean, it's not real football. You don't really have a real game plan. You're going a lot of this one-on-ones. They don't help because they want to see how you handle stuff on your own.
Well, they have trick plays,
right? But I'm saying it's not. It's not like watching someone play in a game where you have an actual game plan and your scheme is your actual scheme that you run. It's a sort of dummy scheme in essence, and you're isolating players on other players as much as possible for evaluation purposes, not trying to win a football game.
So I got to ask you that real quick. I have an issue, given what you just said, with the use of trick plays, because then you can't isolate. You're just fooling a player. What? I mean, I'm happy to be wrong, but what do you think? I don't like it.
I mean, I think everybody likes to have fun as a play caller, so every once in a while you'll see a little something like that. But mostly, they're just trying to isolate, this tackle on this guard, this tackle on this, this tackle on this pass rusher, this corner on this wide receiver, this safety on this tight end, this running back on this. They're usually just trying to sort of see how this person handles this level of competition against a player who is either as talented or sometimes more talented than they are.
But my argument is that a flea flicker doesn't exactly allow you to do that.
Right, but I mean, it's not like there's a lot of that, right? I mean, they run maybe 2, sometimes 3. But it's just sort of messing around, for lack of a better way of putting it. People like to have fun. Humans get bored. I think it's as simple as that, Zenny.
Okay, because I'm gonna end that part of this discussion with this, at least for now, at least my view. If you're gonna have trick plays, then there should be a game plan, and that the quarterback is asked to remember and use, or the quarterbacks are used, so you can evaluate how they take in information and then how they put it on the field and everything else.
Well, okay, let me make that clear. They do teach them plays. They do teach them a system. But I'm saying that instead of looking,
but that's different from a game plan,
right? Okay? That it is different from a game plan, right?
That's different.
They're not trying to.
I can give that to a monkey.
Advantage.
I can give plays to a monkey.
Right? They're not trying to take advantage of like schematic things that you would do in a real game, right? Where you're trying to create things where you get people out of position. You're trying to actually see.
No. Where I'm saying more like, okay, if you expect a certain defense, read the defense. In other words, what happens if the defender isn't there, right? For example, if I say, hey, look, key on the strong safety. If the strong safety goes to the flat, then you go
right. If he buzzes the flat, then now we're going.
Well, if he goes to the flat and your tight end is running, say, a straight stick pattern, you just throw to the stick, right? Because then there's always going to be open, right? Okay. So my point is stuff like that. All right. Then I could see installing a trick play, saying, okay, watch what the safety does. If the safety looks like it's going to do here, then go ahead with the play. Otherwise, you kill the play right at the line of scrimmage. Yeah, well, then I can see, you want somebody to learn. I can see that. I get it.
Yeah. Well, they only play 2 coverages, right? And they tell you they're only playing 2 coverages.
Right.
So
they're easy for you, but it makes it easy for teaching.
They keep it pretty simple because there's only really, 3 real practice days, right?
Right.
So it's not like you can install a full system anyway. You have 3 days. By Thursday, it's a walkthrough, basically. It's a glorified walkthrough on Thursday, and Friday is basically nothing. So I don't get bogged down too much in this. The point is that Kelvin Banks is seen by some teams as a guard and some teams as a tackle. His physical measurements will be very, very determinative in which one he ends up being. Austin Genty could go anywhere from here to the end of the first. This is just my first attempt to sort of feel where he might end up.
Can you make an argument for him going number 1?
I mean, not in modern football, no.
Even with the Saquon Barkley factor?
What I will say is the success that the Eagles just had helps Austin Genty.
Right.
Not a few years ago, he would have gone 10 to 15 picks later, right?
Right.
So the NFL has reawakened to the importance of the running game. Thank you, Philadelphia Eagles. You've done us all a massive service.
At the expense of the New York Giants.
At the expense of several teams. But yeah, that's right.
Most notably the New York Giants.
The Giants and everyone they played this year. But yes,
because the Giants are on tape. That's funny, man.
Yeah, well,
Giants, you got to admit that's hilarious.
The Giants are a troubled franchise, but we won't spend too much time on that. But Austin Genty owes at least a slight debt of gratitude to Saquon Barkley and the Eagles, who reminded people that a dominant running game can fix or set up a lot of things that make your team look better. Malachi Starks is another guy who could go anywhere from here to 25. I'm still messing around with where I think he ends up. They certainly could use him.
Mm-hmm.
The secondary of the Dolphins last year was an adventure. Thrills, chills, and spills, and sometimes nausea. And then Jalen Walker is another player. Okay, so I'm just going to tell something that anyone who knows anything about the Colts knows. After the combine, I'm going to figure out if this is still going to be Jalen Walker. If you know what RAS is, that's relative athletic score. If there's an NFL team that clearly studies RAS, shout out to my friend Kent Lee Platt, who invented RAS, invented relative athletic scoring. But look at how that team is constructed. And look at how many guys have high, like 9 and above RAS scores. That team is the most RAS dominant team in the NFL. So whichever one of the either corners or pass rushers possibly tight ends, but I think it's a little early for a tight end. But they might take a tight end there, but it'll be somebody with a super high RAS score. So if Jalen Walker is like an 8.2 or lower, it won't be him. It'll be somebody else.
Hey, one thing, Bill. I've got to check on my mom real quick. You keep talking, please.
I'll just keep going.
And I'll be right back. Okay.
There's going to be a little bit of a run on pass rushers and people who defend the quarterback against the pass rush in the middle of the first. This I do feel sure about. It might be different names, but the positions I'm very secure on being right about. You're going to see in the middle of the first a run on offensive tackles and pass rushers. And maybe some guards in there as well. But Jalen Walker and James Pierce could go back-to-back, or Josh Simmons could break them up. I feel like Pierce is the higher floor, but maybe the slightly lower ceiling prospect. Walker is a guy that, like his teammate Michael Williams, very high ceiling. The floor, maybe his floor is a little lower than Williams, and maybe a ceiling slightly less, but it's not much less. Josh Simmons is a player that really grew on me. I was not super sold on him early in the season. That I watched more and more of him all throughout the Ohio State run, and now I've seen a total of 18 games over 2 years on Josh Simmons. And yes, he deserves to go somewhere in the middle of the first. He could go a little earlier, he could go a little later, but I think 4 or so picks in either direction, I feel confident about that's where he goes. Then Tyler Booker, he can play either one of the guard positions or possibly center. And it comes down to, once again, evaluations. Some teams like a bigger body at guard, or some teams are nervous about, a certain body type at certain positions. So they don't, they want a guy some teams don't want a center who's over 6'3". Some teams don't want a guard whose arms are shorter than this, or things like that. Foot speed, explosion. Some people look at vertical leap, things like that, to figure out who they want. A player that also has grown on me is Armand Mimbu. I watched him once again. I haven't watched 18 games. I think I watched 12 games on it over 2 seasons. And one is, I think his pure physical talent is certainly in the top 2 or 3 amongst all the offensive tackles. Does he have some technique things to work on? Sure. But he could end up, if he ends up being the best of all the tackles in this class, I won't be shocked. Not one teeny bit. He had some good reps and some questionable reps, quite frankly. Well, once again, that's not real football, but I watched him in the pits at the Senior Bowl. He got whipped a couple of times, but he never got beat the same way twice, which I liked. So Tampa Bay, they could use pass rushers. I think if one of the top pass rushers makes it to them, they'll take that. If Williams makes it to them, or if Pierce makes it to them, or if Walker makes it to them, I think that's who they take. But in this scenario, none of those guys made it to them. So could they trade down? Possibly. Once again, a lot of trade down scenarios I just haven't worked out yet. But I could see them taking him. Luther Burden. Luther Burden is a guy who, so if you look at who they already have, between McMillan and Mike Evans coming close to the end of a Hall of Fame career, they might be losing at least one of their current members of their receiving corps just due to cap. The cap is not, you can't turn it off, kids. It's not a game of Madden. So if they end up losing Godwin or losing any of their current wide receiving group due to the cap concerns, Burden would be an uptick in terms of just pure athletic ability over anybody they've had in the slot for a while. Well, of course, Mike plays in the slot some too. But he is a potentially special athlete, particularly in that system. They can now go 4 wide if they hold on to most of the receivers they have now. But even if they lose, say, Godwin, if McMillan and Burden and Evans are out there, it's still a pretty good group. And once again, they have some younger receivers that have sort of been parked behind, some of the older guys that could emerge as well. So I like that. Once again, they could also look for pass rushers. They could really use a pass rush. Now, Colton Loveland is a player that I am not as high on as the NFL is. The NFL, there are people around the NFL. He and Warren there are people in the NFL who even see them as in that 10 to 20 range. I don't. I would like him in the 25 to 32 range. But the NFL is really sold on him, and he's a good blocker, high-quality individual, guy with really almost spotless character. And he's either tight end 1 or tight end 2 for most people, depending on how you evaluate what you care more about: blocking, route running, and pure athletic ability. Walter Nolan is, first of all, shout out to Walter Nolan for showing up to the Senior Bowl. Some of the players who had first round grades didn't. He did. He had a solid but unspectacular week, but you could tell he's like a Cadillac. He's very smooth. It's like an Escalade, right? You didn't see a lot of explosive big plays from him, either in practice or during the game, but you could tell the talent is there. He is a smooth operator. Now, because the Chargers use something more than they could use in Emeka Egbuka, probably. But will they go with best player available? Possibly. If they get Egbuka, and they can now pair him with Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston, and maybe Palmer. I mean, we'll see who they hold on to. Now they turned what was a weakness just a couple years ago into a strength. They now have a strength of wide receiver. I can still see them, once again, investing in other positions. Is there a linebacker worth taking there? Not really. They could take offensive line. That's what I'm thinking. That's why I said there's going to be a run on offensive linemen ahead of them. If one of the top offensive linemen makes it to them, I think that's who they take. But if not, I can see them taking Egbuka. Shamar Stewart is a fascinating player. He's 281 pounds. He's 6'4" and 7/8. Has arms for days. He looks like he's 15 to 20 pounds lighter than he actually is because he has like practically no body fat. His body is, he's just an impressive physical specimen. He has a great personality. He's a good talker. He's going to make somebody fall in love. And what I do know about the way the Packers draft on the defensive lines, they like big people and they like talented people, and they don't care as much about production as some teams do. There's a guy that has 4.5 sacks in his entire college career. Now, that's not the biggest deal in the world to me either. I mean, J.J. Watt didn't have a huge amount of sacks coming out of college, but he had a lot of tackles, including solo tackles. Stewart is not a guy that's killing it solo tackle-wise. So it's a bit of a dice roll, but he's a talented kid, and what an amazing physical specimen he is. Now, Kenneth Grant, if he makes it here, this is a big old if, because Kenneth Grant may not make it here. He could go easily earlier. But I think this could be one of the steals of the draft. I think he's going to a great situation. There's a lot to do with him. I think he fits what they need. And an already really, really good Vikings defense may take the jump up to elite where they can compete, and go, sort of toe-to-toe with a defense like the one we just saw Super Bowl Sunday. They could get to that level if indeed he makes it to them, which he might not, right? That's a player that conceivably could go earlier than that. But it's a deep defensive tackle class, which means some teams may wait longer than they normally would to take D tackles because there's a lot of good D tackles in this class. Some people see Shamar Stewart as a 3-tech. I think he's not. I think he's more like a 5. But he's a 4-eye 5 and could even go out far as wide 9. I've seen him do it. But back to the lesson at hand. Speaking of wide 9, if you love pass rushing, if you want to rush passers and find a guy who can set a good hard edge despite not being the biggest cat in the world, Mike Green from Marshall. If you're looking for someone who might be the steal of the draft in the first round, if Mike Green makes it this far, which he might not, he had a fantastic 2 days. He didn't stick around after that. He pulled up stakes. He blew it up on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Wednesday night was in the breeze. But Mike Green was fantastic at Senior Bowl. If he tests as well as I think he might test, I'm guessing 4.57 to 4.69. Anything faster than 4.61 is a win. Anything slower than 4.67 is a bit of a loss for him. But he's not the biggest guy, right? But he's got enough size. He's 6'3" and an 1/8. I think he came in at 253. He might slim down to the upper 240s, but either way, it's enough size to be that designated pass rusher. We just saw what Nolan Smith did. He's not quite that athlete. He's a little bigger, but not quite as athletic as who is. Nolan Smith is insane. But he shows you he's more like Bryce Huff, but he could still shows you what you can do with a guy like him. Jedi Barrett. He's not my favorite corner either, but I like him actually a little bit more than the corner who went before him. But the NFL seems not quite as high in him, but he's a guy who could go a few picks earlier. If he goes at 20, I won't be shocked, but somewhere between 20 and 29 is where he goes. I don't think he makes it past Washington. I think Washington, would take him if he were available. But getting back to, we all watched Terry and Arnold's massive, massive struggles. I think Terry Arnold is an NFL football player. I think they'll find a spot for him. He may end up becoming a safety or one of those hybrid sort of safety miniature linebacker types. He just really struggles in space to turn and flip his hips and run with receivers. Just isn't his thing. He grabs and grabs and grabs. Now, can that be fixed? Maybe. But just in case, you may want to find a guy who's able to turn and burn, flip his hips, come downhill, turn and run like a scalded dog. That's Jedi Barron. He's that guy who can truly cover, come and even play some slot, but more natural outside. And then Nick Scourton. Now, I'll admit that Nick Scourton is a guy that I had to warm up to, sell myself on. I heard so much about him. I watched him. I was like, meh. And I watched some more and I was like, meh. And then I watched some more and I was like, okay, right? I still think he's a little bit overrated. And I like him better in the second than the first, but I don't think he makes it to the
Excuse me, but are you this low, or how low should I go?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I'm on 26 to 32.
Okay.
Yeah, I was. Since you weren't here for us to get into sidelining debates, we made better time.
I figured
but yeah, the and once again, this is where a lot of good bargains will be had. So Jihad Campbell is going to be I think a stud in the system they run. He can play Sam. He can play Mike, possibly even Will. He knows how to take on blockers because they make you do that at Alabama. There's some places where they let you run around blocks. Alabama doesn't. That's not their thing. They make you learn how to take on blocks. But he's athletic enough that he could simply avoid blockers, but they don't want him to. They want him to sort of be, gap sound and to stay where stand up that guard. Sometimes he can do it. He can cover tight ends. He maybe not running. Well, maybe some running backs, but maybe not the more elusive running backs. But he's a guy who can do a fair number of things. He's been in a fairly demanding defensive system that asks a lot of you mentally and physically. So he's a guy who I think, like I said, could really stand out. I just talked about Mike Green. It's just a pure pass rusher. But he also can set edges. I'm going to make clear that he's a guy that can hold up in the run game. He does know how to set edges. I don't want him, battling the Trent Williams of the world or, like elite level tackles, but I love putting on tight ends or on that open end, right? Where he just is coming screaming off the edge. We saw what Nolan Smith just did in the Super Bowl. Not quite the level athlete, but a good sized guy. I mean, good size for that. 6'3" and an eighth, 253 pounds. And as I said, the combine is huge for a guy like him because can he show that he can play linebacker? Can he show that he's a good enough athlete that even if he can't play linebacker, you could pretend like they do some guys like, oh yeah, pretend you're dropping. But I think he'll test fairly well. Jahdae Barron, like I said, we all saw Terry and Arnold, right? I think there's a place for him in the NFL, but playing either slot or true corner is not that place for him. I think he's more of a hybrid player. You play him, maybe he's more of almost like a spur or something where he doesn't have to cover as much in space, where he can cover coming downhill as opposed to having to flip his hips and run. It's just not his thing. Nick Scourton, I think if Jihad Campbell or Mike Green or Jahdae Barron were on the board, I think that those would be who Washington would take. But in this scenario, they're not. They could take possibly Benjamin Morrison. Washington is hoping to get back Emmanuel Forbes and some other players that missed last year due to injury. But you can't always count on guys being the same when they come back. They do need pass rush no matter what, right? No matter what, they need pass rush. So Nick Scourton, if he's there, I see them grabbing him. Benjamin Morrison is a scheme fit for the Bills. The Bills are rebuilding the airplane in the air, right? They're repairing. They've lost some key players off of that defense that was really good not too long ago, and some of those guys have not come back because, well, the cap. And so they're restocking. Morrison fits what they do. He's a guy that's smart enough and tough enough that if you ask him to play safety, he could do it. Athletic enough to play corner especially if he's not the guy that takes the most athletic of the other team's receivers. He's a good but not an elite level athlete at the position. And now we're going backwards.
Hey, quick question.
Well,
I noticed
I'm going to try to move. Yes.
I noticed you didn't have. Oh, wait, I didn't intend for. I hit the wrong one.
Yeah, I'm not hearing you.
You can't hear me?
I'm still not hearing you.
Really?
I don't know if you're muted or.
I doesn't say that I'm muted. No, let me try something.
Yeah, I'm not getting any of that. I'm gonna try to read your lips. Try to read your.
Hold on.
Okay, one question.
No,
One.
That's wild. I'm not.
I think you're asking about one of the players, but I can't tell what you're. Oh, maybe you're typing something in the chat. Let's take a look.
No, he can't hear me. Hold on.
Okay, so let's see what Zenny's typing in the chat.
Can you hear me now? Bill, can you hear me now?
Check out.
Bill?
Okay.
I'm not seeing
it. Let me need to log it. Let's see.
Comments. Join the chat. Oh, I meant to join it. It must be a connect. Yeah. I'm not. If you're typing it in the private chat, I'm not seeing it. Okay. Well, I'm sure you're trying to ask me some question about. I just mentioned that previously. There's going to be a run, as I said before, on offensive linemen, particularly tackles, in the middle of the first round. And then players that people who might see as tackles or possibly guards, but most guys are tackles. Booker is a guy who can play either guard or center. Mimbu is a tackle, though some people might see him as a guard. Luther Burden might be the heir apparent to Mr. Godwin. We're going to see what happens, right? The cap is a cruel mistress. The Tampa Bay might be losing at least one of their wide receivers, and Luther Burden might be, like I said, the heir apparent. Talked about Colston Loveland. We know that Sean Payton loves tight ends, and they don't really have one, or at least not one that he loves yet. Now, maybe Greg, what's his name, finally stays. Yeah, cannot hear you, right. Maybe Greg, what's his name from UCLA, finally stays healthy. But we've said that 3 years in a row now. So if a guy 3 years in a row manages not to finish the season, then you may need to backstop that position. And if it turns out he manages to stay healthy, huzzah. But then now you have two good tight ends. But they've been piecing it together with, lower price free agents and guys who were drafted later in the draft, or even undrafted free agents. Now they're going to draft a guy earlier in the draft. As I mentioned, Jahad Campbell is I think a really good fit for what the Rams want to do. The Rams now have first round draft picks, which is exciting to see. They're going to rebuild that defense. Their offense is still pretty darn good. Mike Green solves so many problems for the Ravens. If he turns out to be what I think he's going to be, I hate that as a Steelers fan. But they will then have a great pass rushing, they'll be able to put him with guys that they have already some have come along and slowly. Matabike has been their best. Yeah. Thank you, Manuel. Yeah, I think he's a good fit for what you guys want to do on defense. And he can do several different things at a high level. Like I said, unlike some of these modern linebackers who don't really know how to stack and shed, he can do that. He can stack and shed. He can cover. He's really good against the run game. He's pretty good against the pass, and he can be pass rush. He can rush the passer a little bit. I talked about skirting already. I think that, like I said, Washington could use everything on defense. I mean, whatever makes it to them on defense, they're going to take. If Barron's there, they'll take him. If Green's there, they'll take him. If Campbell's there, they'll take him. But in this scenario, he's not. So they're going to take Scarton. Benjamin Morrison doesn't really fit what they like in a corner. They like their corners to be like really good pure athletes. Morrison is a thinking man's corner, more of a Jeff Okudah type. Now, the good news, like I said, they're replaying the building in the air, the plane in the air. They like thinkers. They do like smart guys. And if it turns out that he's more of a nickel, they'll kick him inside, or maybe even like a guy that ends up, playing safety. God knows they can use safeties too. But I think he ends up being their other corner, their corner two. Donovan Jackson, I don't think I'm telling anybody anything they don't know when I tell you that the Chiefs could use depth of talent on that offensive line. they have a problem. Joe Tooney, who was their best guard, ended up having to play tackle for them in the Super Bowl. That's not an ideal situation. If they're able, either through, I think they're going to attack it in free agency and the draft. I foresee, right, the Rams, right, what they care about is quickness. If you can be big and quick, they'll take that too, man. Well, but generally guys 6'1" and up aren't all that quick. They're fine with you being 5'9", 5'10", but if they wouldn't turn down 6'1" and quick. It's just that 6'1" guys tend not to be. When you find a guy like Mike Haynes, we'll see. Tyler Warren or Loveland are going to go somewhere in the first round. So in this particular scenario, I had Loveland going. Don't worry, Warren will get somewhere up there. He could end up in Green Bay. No, not Green Bay. I'm kidding. Gabriel's got like a million tight ends. But he could end up in, of course, not the Ravens. The Ravens have a million tight ends. And the Lions are satisfied with their tight end situation. But Washington is very old in the tight end position. So maybe in the next version, but they have bigger needs on defense. So I feel like 2 tight ends could go in the first, but I won't be shocked if one of them gets pushed out of the first by the need for offensive line and corners, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to cover and protect your quarterback and rush the passer. Tight ends are cool. I love tight ends. But tight ends can be almost like a luxury, right, for a lot of teams. We've seen teams basically get by without – I mean, we just saw the Colts basically get by without really using the tight end position at all. Now, was that a mistake? I would say yes. But they made very little use of the tight end position this past year. So maybe that'll change. But, yeah, I think Tyler Warren – maybe the next version, Loveland, is the tight end that gets pushed out. I got to find home for the tight ends, right? I think maybe 2 go, but I got to figure out how it works. That's the whole point of doing a bunch of these, right, is to see all the different scenarios. And once again, when the trade ups and trade downs sort of solidify in my mind, you'll see some things change. Donovan Jackson. If one of the other guys, I've been a fan of Verse since he was at Albany, right, before he transferred to Florida State. He and Anton Junkaj and a young man who unfortunately passed away were part of one of the great FCS defensive, pass rush triplets I've ever seen in the history of me watching football. I've been doing that a long time. But I think Donovan Jackson, if he's there, they'll take him. They'd love to take someone else who maybe is higher up there, but I think there's going to be a run, as I said, in the middle of the first. So they'll take what they can get. And then Gray Zabel. If for some reason Jackson's gone, I can see them taking Gray Zabel. But Gray Zabel fits what the Eagles love. And the Eagles can take whatever they want, right? The Eagles are in a great position where they don't have to take any player they don't want to take. They don't have needs. I won't say they don't have needs, but they're drafting for talent and depth at this point. Could they use another wide receiver? Sure. But there's a lot of good wide receivers available in the second and the third and the whatever round. Could they take another defensive back? Maybe. And maybe in another version of this, they take a defensive back. Maybe another version of this, they take a tight end. Maybe that's where your boy Tyler Warren, or maybe it's where Cortland Loveland goes and Warren goes earlier. I'll be playing around with these a lot. I think Zabel could actually end up in the second. So maybe, like I said, I'm going to do 32 of these over the, between now and the, at least between now and the actual draft. I'll be doing 1 or 2 mock drafts per week for the next several weeks. So you'll get to see many permutations. There'll be some where there's 3 first-round quarterbacks. There'll be some where there's 2 tight ends. There'll be some where there's 1 tight end. There'll be some where there's 6 pass rushers or 5 pass rushers that go in the first round. There'll be some where 4 go in the first round. There'll be some where 5 corners go in the first or 3 corners go in the first. So this is a dynamic thing for 2 reasons. 1, the combine hasn't happened yet. So that's the last big domino to fall. I've seen the Shrine Game. I was at the Senior Bowl. I had my colleague Jeff Barnes at the Tropical. I had another guy I talked to. My friend Jimmy was at the College Gridiron Showcase, and he was also at the Hula Bowl. So I've talked to people who've been at almost all of the All-Star games, or I was at it myself. And I'm getting a pretty good sense of how the players that I watched on tape against certain levels of competition stack up when they go against other levels of competition. I'm getting a good idea. Once again, we're getting an idea of how big and small some of these people are because they get measured and weighed at such events. And of course, anyone who knows anything about reading program heights and weights, it's even worse in basketball, right? But it's pretty bad in football. One of my favorite games, what I call the Incredible Shrinking Prospect, to see, what guy gains or loses. Usually it's loses the most height or weight. Every once in a while you see a guy be taller. Usually it's, a fraction of an inch, maybe a whole inch, very rarely. And then weight definitely fluctuates. Once again, guys will sometimes, usually it's losing. Occasionally a player will gain weight, especially if some of the quarterbacks everybody thinks are too thin, right? We saw, Bryce bulk up, right? We saw him get heavier. We saw Mariota bulked up, Teddy Bridgewater bulked up. Those guys that people think might be a little too thin, sometimes they'll work on that. I think that Shador is probably working on that, trying to put on some weight. But generally, big guys try to get lighter, little guys try to get heavier. It's usually how it works out. Because people question your size if you're a little too thin, and of course, big guys are trying to run fast, faster, at least at the combine. So you're going to see another version of this in a few days. It'll look different. I put on different brains to some extent. So one of them might be sort of my thought process. Then I'll try to get into the minds of the general managers. I know how some of these people think, right? I know how Ballard thinks, right? I really have a good feeling for Ballard. Like I get the Colts picks right a lot. I have a really good feel for what Ballard likes. Jason Light. I have a pretty decent idea of what Jason Light likes. I get a fair number of Tampa Bay's picks right. The Bears are kind of a mystery to me. I don't quite understand what they like. Some teams are very physically based, right? Height, weight, speed. Some teams care more about production. Some teams sort of look at 50-50, and some teams are just a question mark. I have no idea how some teams put their board together. And once again, maybe they know something I don't know, right? They have access to all the information. But I've certainly seen some teams' boards where it's like, I can't see it. I don't know what they're doing. And once again, some of them, but Brett Veach, right? Look at the bottom teams here, right? These last
Bill, can you hear me?
1, 2, 3, 4, from 26 on down. These are all teams with really good GMs, right? Mm-hmm. That's one thing all these teams have in common. Every single one of these teams has a GM that is essentially trustworthy, right? That you get a feeling they know what they're doing. Even with the whole F them picks thing that we got out of the Rams, yeah, I'm more than ready to wrap this thing up. But we know that when he picks, we know what he picks and why he picks it. And it's a combination of the player's talent and need goes into it. Eric DaCosta is clearly fruit of the Ozzie Newsome tree, who is, I guess, grafted onto the Belichick tree, or how you want to think of it. So a lot of the things that the Patriot way is certainly akin to the Raven way. And then Jedi Barron, or not Jedi Barron, but that's the pick I have there. Brad Holmes is a guy that comes off of the Rams, right? Les Snead tree, right? Comes out of the Rams organization. I scouted Brad Holmes when he was a player, right? A sort of long-legged, rangy defensive tackle, sort of an odd body type, about 267 pounds, about 6'4". But getting enough about him as a player. So, but I understand how he picks. And then, I will definitely mention visiting NFL News by Zennie62.com. And just go to Zennie62Media, right? We have some great stuff coming. I'm going to have scouting reports on individual players, and I'm going to do my wrap-up on some of the Senior Bowl stuff I talked about. I'll talk about I have some interviews with players that I recorded, all that stuff. But getting back to this, Nick Scorton is one of those. He certainly looks the part. He has some games on tape where he looks fantastic. He also disappears a lot. He worries me. But it's into the first round. Some teams will take a dice roll. Benjamin Morrison feels like a really good pick for what they care about and what they prize in that defense. Once again, I talked about Donovan Jackson. They desperately need. These are all really good GMs, right? Les Snead is a great GM. Brett Veach is a great GM. Jason Wright and that new group that they brought in, Josh, and that new group they brought in with the Commanders, right? It looks like they know what the heck they're doing, which is a refreshing change for the people of the DC area. And, last but certainly not least, The team that picks last, Howie Roseman is. I mean, there's a T-shirt you can buy now in Philadelphia and other places with the ski mask, right? Ski mask Howie, right? Howie with the ski mask and the big chain with the H on it. Because he just keeps going out there burgling. He's out there pulling heist and getting all this talent. This team can do whatever they want, and whatever they do seems to be right. I am convinced that whatever the Eagles do again this year in the draft will work. If they know what the draft is, they understand it, they do it well. This is my first of many mocks. Feel free to dislike it, tear it apart. The next one will be different in places. Probably about 5 or 6 of these picks will be the same. The rest will be different. And that'll be sort of constant. I'll move. Then in a couple of weeks, I'll have about 10 that I feel good about, and the rest will change. And then I'll be up to 12. And, by the time we get days away from the draft, I'll probably have about 24, 25 I feel good about. The rest, I'm guessing at. But, yep, that's my first mock.
Nice.
Once again, visit NFL News by Zennie62Media.com. Go to Zennie62Media. On all various social platforms, Instagram, TikTok, X/Twitter, Blue Sky, probably. He's waving his finger, pointing NFL something 5. I don't know. Himself, Zennie. Oh, YouTube, duh. YouTube and see. I don't know. And the website. Go to the actual website. Also, blogs by Zennie or something like that. Zennie, Blogspot, whatever that something. Oh, Vlog Report. Yeah, check out the Vlog Report with Zennie62, Oakland, NFL, Vegas, Oakland, Las Vegas, NFL. All that good stuff. And once again, it's an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure. I'll be doing this again a bunch of times. So at least once a week or so, I guess you'll see me talk about my latest mock. Zennie's trying to communicate something.
Yeah.
Power ranking. Cleveland Browns in the right spot. Oh, that's the NFL News by Zennie. Right, that's it. Yeah, well, good news, Browns fans. I think the Browns will be better next year. How much better remains to be seen. That's a really tough division. The Bengals will be better next year too. I don't know about my Steelers. I'm worried about the Steelers, but the Ravens will continue to be the Ravens. So you might have a shot at the third place spot, maybe second, probably third place spot, Browns. But yeah, I've run out of things to talk about. So, mass shooting hits Super Bowl victory. Wait, what? Is that a thing? I don't remember hearing about that.
Ta-da!
Oh, okay. There we go. There's the actual. Yep. Yes. So, it was a great day for Jalen. A great day for Jalen's team, and not just team as in the Eagles, but his team. Like the people who believed in him. I followed his agent, Nicole Lynn, one of the top agents in the game, and I watched her over the past, I think, 11 or so years. I think that's how long she's been representing players. Build and get, more and better clients each year. She's an amazing woman. Shout out to Nicole Lynn and that whole team that Jalen has around him, which are all women. Shout out to him and just being a respectful, great young man who some people think he's, phony or whatever it is, but I think he's just well-raised. Bookmark. Right, we go. Bookmark NFL News by Zennie62Media.com. Yeah, do that. And like I said, I'll have a bunch more mocks by maybe this Friday or this Thursday or something. I'll have my next version of my mock. We'll figure out what day. And then I'll have another one after that, another one after that. So at least once, sometimes twice a week, you'll get blogs. And then once again, individual scouting reports. You'll get a scouting report on Melvin Smith. You'll get a scouting report on Jackson Dart and all the other quarterbacks in this class. You'll get scouting reports on running backs. I like the running backs in this class. I'll start with maybe my favorite, maybe the top running back, but my personal favorite, Cam Skatebo. I just think he's a fantastic person and, once again, tremendously talented running back. You do a little bit of everything: powerful, smart, quick, great hands, can run routes, can punt a little bit if that's what you need. Just super versatile. But yeah, I'm a big fan of him. Whatever. I'm just rambling now. I don't know what Zennie wants me to do. But I was ready to wrap up a couple minutes ago, and now I'm just stalling for some reason. I don't know. But check out all the stuff we have going. It's going to be great stuff. Once again, player interviews, scouting reports, more mocks. You love mocks? I got them. You'll get at some point. I'll be doing 3 rounds, and eventually, yes. Goodbye. Thank God. Goodbye, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy. I guess the day after Christmas is Boxing Day. I guess the day after Valentine's Day, hopefully a snuggling day. I don't know, but enjoy whatever it is with whomever you are, and have a wonderful rest of your evening. And I wish you Godspeed. Oh, and please subscribe to Zennie62 on YouTube. Yeah, if you haven't already, hopefully you have already. But if you haven't, please do it. What are we doing? I've done it. You should too. Say goodnight, Gracie. Okay, yes. Few of us are even old enough to know what that reference means. If you actually know who Gracie Allen is, then way to go. Way to go. That's awesome. Because I'm feeling very alone. I don't know why Zennie is torturing me this way. I thought we were wrapping up, but it seems like it's still going. Okay.